This is a controversial statement, but believe it or not, it was the pandemic for me. Was like my best moment of feeling at peace. Reason being,
That is Forest Melton, and I am Catherine Alonso. Welcome back to an episode of Change and You, a podcast all about how you can make change in the world, in your own life, and in the lives of people around you. And our first season is all about how can you overcome obstacles for change. And when I was thinking about putting together this very first inaugural podcast season, I was thinking about this idea, which is, what if I had somebody come onto the podcast and we did a live values exploration session to help them figure out what their core values are. Core values is really central to the work I do in helping teams and individuals create change in their lives and their communities. I do a lot of core values work, understanding what your core values are and how to utilize them on a day-to-day basis. And I thought, what if on a podcast we brought somebody in and did an exploration session with them to help them figure out what their core values are? And I'm so glad that I did. Forest Melton is a really good friend of mine. He's also a research scientist in the healthcare field, and he has just so many passionate interests. He cares deeply about making the world a better place. He serves on a bunch of boards. When I have known him, we met working for both of us volunteering for an organization called Ben's Bells, which is an organization originally opened in Tucson, Arizona, that is all about spreading intentional kindness. And he and I really are united in a passion and a love for kindness and utilizing intentional kindness in the world. We also, I think the reason we stayed in touch is we have a shared passion for self-awareness and self-development, really getting to know yourself really well and being able to kind of work on yourself so that you can build a life that you love. And so I knew that he would be the perfect person to ask on and do this experiment with me. And I'm so grateful for just how open he was and all of the incredible offerings that he has in this conversation, just sharing his own experiences and his own thoughts, being completely open, completely vulnerable. And I'm really, really grateful to him. And I'm really grateful to him because I think being able to see somebody else look into their own history and into their own selves and reflect on what their core values are is just it's such a cool thing to see. And we can learn so much about ourselves by seeing somebody else go through that. And so I'm excited for you to see it. And the other thing I want to let you know is that as a part of this podcast series, I've created a worksheet, a tool that you can utilize to explore your own core values. So a lot of the activities that we are going to go through together in this podcast, I have put to paper, and it will be available for you to download from my website, catherinealonso.com, and you'll be able to go through and explore what your core values are. This conversation paired with that resource, you are well on your way to figuring out what your core values are. So without any further ado, my conversation with the one, the only, Forest Melton. Forest Melton, welcome to the podcast.
thank you. I'm happy to be here. Very excited to see you.
I'm so excited to have you here, and I'm really grateful too. The reason of which I think will become apparent really soon. But why don't you start off by telling our wonderful listeners a little bit about you and what you do professionally?
Ooh, a little bit about me. I am a Phoenix, Arizona native, which I'm told is super rare. I went to the University of Arizona. I'm a Wildcat, so that is a passion of mine. But professionally, I am a health equity program manager at a children's hospital. So basically what we do is we look for health disparities, and then we try to resolve them by creating programs and initiatives to kind of bridge the gap between patients and, like, say, food insecurity or housing insecurity, things like of that nature.
And what is it that you are most passionate about in the world? Like, what led you to this path?
Oh my gosh. Most passionate about in the world? I mean, it's got to be people. I'm like a people person. I love human beings. I have a huge passion. I want to be like, I love to volunteer. My goal in life is to be like a philanthropist and not necessarily like a rich person that gives a lot of money, but like a person that dedicates a lot of their life to giving back and serving the community. So I don't even know where that started or how that started, but it's been very constant in my life is people.
Well, and we've known each other for a few years, and I would say that is you to a T, and it is very constant. From everything I know that you're passionate about, from your professional work to your philanthropy and your volunteer work, it's all about people and making people's lives better.
Yes, I would say that's accurate. Thank you.
Well, and I think even on an individual basis, because you're just so joyful in everything that you do, I always feel better after we have an opportunity to connect. So even person by person, I feel like you make people's lives better.
Oh my gosh, I appreciate you saying that. I always feel filled up when we hang out and talk too. So the feeling is mutual.
Yay. Well, and that's why I'm so excited to be doing this. So to explain what we're doing today, actually, let me back up. One of the things I think that we originally connected on, and I don't even really remember how or when we actually met, but I think one of our shared philosophies is that we both really care about making the world a better place. And I would say that we both think that personal development is an important part of doing that. That you can't change the world without changing yourself.
Yep.
Where did you first stumble into self-awareness and personal development?
Oh man. That's a toughie. I would say it's always been a little bit present, but I wasn't super engaged until I would say like my mid to early 20s. I was actually in this like a network marketing company, and they were like I was like with a girl, dating a girl. She brought me into it, and I was like trying to live up to these expectations, and their whole thing was like personal development. Like it was a little intense, and but that was kind of like one of my early introductions. Although wait, if I think about this a little bit harder, probably my earliest introduction is my dad, because he was really into like early days of like Tony Robbins. He like bought the like cassette tapes, and he would listen to those, and he would buy a lot of books. Like he would come home from the bookstore and he'd check out like 10 books, and it'd just be like a stack of books, and he was laying on the couch, sitting on the couch, like flipping through these books. I was like, man, how does a person read that many books in a day? I don't know. Dad's got a big brain, I guess. So I think that was probably my first introduction.
I love that. I love you sharing that. And it's important to know, I think, because of what we're going to be doing today. So I think my own introduction to personal development was being the CEO of Javelina, and really realizing that, wanting to be the very best CEO I could be, and wanting to be the very best leader I could be, and realizing that the things that were getting in my way weren't really to do with technical skills or knowledge. It was more about who I am as a person and my natural strengths and natural weaknesses and personality traits, but also kind of hang-ups and insecurities. And so I just started concentrating on those one at a time, and that led me down the path of personal development. And one of the most powerful tools that I have discovered for making change, both on a personal level and on a community level, is knowing what your core values are. And not only knowing what your core values are, but being able to utilize those core values as a tool in your daily life and to use them to navigate challenges and use them to make change and use them really kind of every day for all kinds of things. And so I have developed this curriculum for figuring out what your core values are and then being able to use them in your life and your work, which I go through this curriculum with teams of people, with workshops of people. And I'm going to be threading a lot of it through this podcast and the social media content and all the various resources that I plan to offer through catherinealonso.com. And so one of the thoughts I had was, in this podcast, what I'd love to do is every season, because we're doing a seasons model, and every season we'll focus on a different thing, a different aspect of change. But each season, what I'd love to do is invite a leader, an established change leader, in to really kind of live workshop with me what their core values are. So you and I are going to do 2 sessions. Today, we're going to dig into what are your core values. And then next week, we're going to look at then how do you utilize those core values for change? And I've done this with very many people privately. I've never done this before. Well, actually, that's not true. I've done it once before with somebody in a podcast format, but this will be a little bit different. And I'm really grateful to you and excited to do this with you in particular because of your passion for people and for making a difference.
Mm-hmm. I'm excited to be here. I don't even know what to expect. I just know that I would love to know more about my core values. This is I'm really into personal development work as well. So I can't wait to figure out what we uncover.
Yes. So before we dig into my first question for you that'll help us to unpack what your core values might be, I think I should share one really important piece of information. And that is, what is a core value? What are core values? So every single person has core values, and they really shape your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions. And every single one of us has lots and lots of things that we value. It's a long, long, long list of things that are important to us. But your core values are the set of things that, when combined, they really, over time, show themselves to be the most important concepts to you in terms of how you feel, how you think, and how you act. And this unique set of core values is just as unique to you as your DNA or your thumbprint. There's no human being on the planet that has your exact same set of core values defined the way that you define them. Because research shows that no 2 human beings can have exactly the same definition of a complex concept. So simple concept, sure. Like if I asked a room of 30 people to draw me a picture of a table or an apple or a cat, I'm probably going to get 30 very similar pictures back. But if I asked a room of 30 people to draw me a picture of adventure or honesty or love, I probably would get very different pictures back. And so your unique set of core values, how you define them, is yours and yours alone. And so there are lots of different ways to think about what your core values might be, but knowing and remembering that your core values shape how you think, how you feel, and how you act. What we're going to do today is put our detective hats on, and we are going to look into your life, your past, for clues as to what your core values are. And so I'm going to ask you a ton of questions that will about different times in your life. And I'll ask you a bunch of questions. And then at the end, I'm going to share with you kind of some of the themes and the patterns that I've heard. And then we'll match that up with your own responses and what you think, your core values might be.
Okay.
Sound good?
I can do this. It sounds great.
You can do this for us. I have faith. And then one more thing to share, which isn't that important, is that randomly, I think maybe I have allergies for the first time in my life. Like today, I've just been very sneezy and my nose is running and I don't feel sick. But just to explain to you and to our listeners, if I randomly sneeze or look like I'm about to cry, it's probably my mystery allergies.
Okay. That's not my amazing storytelling skills.
Well, it might be. I guess it might be. It could be. Okay, let's dig in. All right. My very first question is, Forest, when you think of a pivotal moment in your life that for whatever reason, everything that came before it was different than everything that came after it, whether it changed your view of the world or the trajectory of your life, what is the very first thing that comes to mind?
Yes. Okay. This is such a good question. I would say that a pivotal moment where everything was different after would have to be this nuclear breakup I had. Sounds really cliche when I say it out loud, but it was such a game changer for me because it was so devastating, and I'm such a people pleaser, and I hadn't no one had died in my life before, so this was the first major loss I ever really had. And I felt so, it was nuclear because it was just there was nothing, there was nothing, there was no, all the skills I had developed and my personality, I felt like there was nothing there, and I was rebuilding from ground zero. And what I did was I had never been so open to growth and learning and figuring out what was going on with me. I think before that, one of my strong suits was I just could avoid. I was a master avoider. And so I had this kind of love will conquer all, we'll get through it, and we don't have to think about these hard questions. And once that breakup happened, I was like, okay, that doesn't work. This isn't working. And I saw that as a major flaw and a major thing to overcome. So I was just we're talking about intro to personal development. That was I think that was my biggest personal development kind of. It could arguably be the intro, because I was attending seminars. I had a mentor who was you should do this seminar, and it was very expensive. I wasn't working at the time, and he was like, I'll give you $100. I think it was $600 or something. And he was like, I'll give you $100. Go ask 10 people for $50. And I was like, oh my God, this is, this sounds hard, but that's what I did. I asked my mom, and I asked a brother, and I asked a friend, and soon enough I had enough money to attend this seminar, which was a game changer, and I'm glad I did it. And then I was just reading books. I read 50 books in a year, and it all really opened my eyes to kind of the way I was being, that the breakup, I don't know, I'm not blaming anybody. The breakup was the breakup, but I had parts in it. She had parts in it. And the parts that I could see for myself was man, I was really avoidant. I was really people pleaser, sugarcoater. And those weaknesses and flaws I can learn how to undo those things and not be such a slave to this nature. And so I began this quest and this journey to kind of overcome my, the nature that I had created for myself up to that point. And, I've never turned back. Things have never been the same. And I feel like I have a level of emotional intelligence that, did not exist, and, other people find unusual. But I also feel like I can also connect with people on a deeper level who are suffering or not suffering. I feel sometimes even people who are going through hard things. I think previously I'd just be oh man, that sucks, or we'll get through it. It'll get better. And part of that breakup was sitting with well, it might not get better. I mean, it will get better, but it might not feel good. It's not going to feel good tomorrow. It might hurt for a while, but we can acknowledge that this is painful instead of jumping to, it'll be fine. It will be fine, but it was very dismissive. I had a very, but yeah, anyway, that was my pivotal moment, and, things have never been the same for me.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It was really, really informative, and I love how you explained it. So And I think you, excuse me, you shared, and I got a really good sense in terms of what was different before and after, is that before you were a people pleaser, avoidant, sugarcoater, maybe dismissive. And afterwards, you really recognized that that wasn't serving you. And you maybe needed to change those behaviors. But it's not that easy, right? Like, it's not that easy that you just change. So what were some of the things that enabled you to actually make that change in your life after the breakup?
Wow. Yeah, you are right. It was not easy. It was like a years long journey, and I'm still on the journey. I tell people that don't know me that I'm like a recovering people pleaser, because I feel like I'm always an addict. Like, it's never, I'm never like.
I hear that for sure.
Right. But the steps I took was, it can't be, what I realized was, you can do something once, but like that feeling and that knowledge is going to go away if you're not practicing it. So I had to figure out a way to like keep practicing these new habits until they became more ingrained. And it's not that I stopped practicing once they became more ingrained. I feel like instead of practicing 5 times a day, I could do it like 5 times a week. But the major thing that was pivotal for me was this seminar, the landmark forum that I was in. I was there. I would enter into seminars as much as I could. So like, I had this kind of in my head that I should do something in person in a group at least once a year, no matter what it was. Like, I tried all kinds of different seminars. Some were kind of good. I had a family friend who was starting their own kind of company, and I attended this fellow's seminar, and I was like, cool. That was a big waste of money, but glad to support local business. So it's not always, they're not all going to be slam dunks, but I think it's like the practice of going to things that are going to like help you reflect. So seminars and like in-person things, I was like, I'm committed to doing something big once a year. And then the other thing I would do was books. I was like, I am committed to reading a minimum of 1 book a month. So reading books regularly and my criteria for books was like, if I had heard it more than once, then I was like, I have to buy it. Because like, if there were separate people saying it, I was like, I had to buy it. I don't have an option. So that was one of the criterias. And I had this book list, and or if someone really close to me was like, you have to read this, like, this is the book. Like, I was like, okay, I have to buy it. I don't even have a choice. I didn't read 100% of them, but I realized that if I bought it and had it with me, like on my bookshelf, then I was like 80% more likely to actually read it, instead of the thought of, I will finish this book and then buy the next one. Like that doesn't work. So seminars, books, and then I would journal. Like, journaling became like a daily practice of writing down my thoughts. Because another thing I had a huge problem with being so I don't even know what the word is. Not emotionally intelligent. Like, I just didn't know where to start, and I didn't know how I felt. I think when you're a people pleaser, you're really good at, you're like, I care about other people's needs and wants and emotions, and that becomes like your purpose and your daily kind of mission, to the point that like my feelings and my emotions are irrelevant. And to the point where now I don't even really know, or I'm in tune with how I even feel. So I had a mentor who had a similar affliction to mine, and one of the assignments he gave me, he was like, when you feel something, I just want you to carry this little notebook around, and when you feel something, write it down. Just write it down. Even if you don't know what it is, just kind of try. And so like, part of my like homework for a while was like identifying a feeling and writing it down. And I was like, and then, like even then I was like, is that what I'm feeling? Am I upset? No, it's fine. And I would have this like battle with myself, like, am I upset? I'm not that upset. Am I upset? Am I mad? So that was part of it, was seminars, journaling, reading every day. And then I had these kind of mentors who were just people in my life that I kind of told them that they were going to be mine and they didn't have a choice. So I found people who I wanted to be like, and I would attach myself to them, and I would meet with these people kind of like I would say like monthly, or someone I could talk to on a regular basis, kind of an unscheduled basis. But what ended up happening was I usually would talk to this person at least once a month. We would like meet, and I would kind of reveal my feelings of what I was going through, and he would give me feedback and give me like, here's some things to look at and to consider, and like read this book. And so yeah, those were probably my 4 biggest, most successful, efficient ways forward. And same with the books. Like not every book was great. Like I was like, this was kind of like, this didn't really serve me. But it like 80-20 rule all day. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's awesome. Okay, so different question. So what is a personal choice or a personal decision that you have made for yourself in your lifetime? Could be recent, could be a long time ago. And typically it would be a decision to start doing something, to stop doing something, or to change something in your life.
Ooh. Yeah, that's interesting. I can think of a big change that I made. So I am pursuing a PhD, and it was not a decision I came to lightly, but I kind of was always struggling career-wise and financially a little bit. I kept starting things and like running into a ceiling and not being able to figure out how to get through it until I lost this job that I really liked. And I was so frustrated and upset that part of my motivation, something that I actually do with myself, I have these like internal secret battles with other people that they don't know about that is happening. And it will drive me for years. And so this battle I had was, I was like, so the situation was a little messed up. It was kind of like my boss got fired, and so then I was like her direct hire and like her person, and so I was just kind of like a target, and it was gonna happen sooner or later. And they finally just found some reason to let me go, and I was devastated. But I was like, screw these guys, like I'm gonna get a PhD, and I'm never gonna have to deal with people like this again, and I'm gonna show them they lost a good valuable asset. And I was single at the time, and I was just like, I'm hell or high water, I'm gonna do this thing. And it was so hard. Like I didn't even have so I'd done a master's degree, and I think master's degrees are kind of predatory. We can talk about that on another podcast. Why are they so expensive for like a 2-year program? I hadn't paid all my tuition from a master's degree I finished like 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. And so they wouldn't release my transcripts to even apply to the PhD program I wanted. So I had to channel some resourcefulness from a place that I didn't know existed. Like I think I borrowed money from a family member to pay off the tuition so that I could apply to this PhD program. I didn't want to pay tuition for the PhD because I was like very upset about how my master's program went. So I was like, I'm going to get a job at the U of A, and then I will start taking classes, and then I will get into the program, and I'm not going to pay for tuition, or I'm not going to take out student loans at least. And so I did get a job in Tucson, which I lived in Phoenix. And so I was just driving to Tucson, which is like 2 hours. I would be in Tucson for Monday through Friday, and then I would drive back. So I had to borrow money, had to drive to Tucson. My car died. And so now I've already borrowed money, and I'm like, I'm not going to borrow money again. So I went to this insurance auction that my dad used to go to, and they auction cars off, like, can I get $500 for this? 500, Jack. Can I get 600? 600. Can I get 700? I went through this process, and I couldn't get a car, and I finally got this car for $500. And this little Saturn, it was a very old Saturn, but this little stick shift Saturn was taking me down and back to Tucson for 2 years. I had planned on having it for 3 months, and I was going to upgrade, but man, it was a good car. So I'm out here. I had to borrow money to pay off my old tuition. I had to scrounge around to find a $500 car, and I eventually got into this program, and it's just been one of the best decisions ever, because I don't know, one of my pieces of motivation was I want to do research. I really want to do research, but you can't really do research out here detached from academia. You can kind of there's not a lot of companies that'll just take you on and let you do stuff. Whereas when you're part of the university, they're oh yeah, we want to teach you how to do this so that we can have our free labor and you can do it and we can go do other stuff. So I did actually gain a lot of experience. I got to lead a few focus groups for COVID-19 hesitancy in African Americans. I got to do a research project on African American women and delivering healthcare in salons. So all these really interesting projects that there's no way I could have ever if anyone would have ever let me do before the PhD program, but it really my resume looks incredible now. Even though I'm not done with the PhD, I could quit now and I'd probably good for life. But that was a really big decision. It was really, really hard, and I feel like I'm kind of over the hump a little bit, and things are really, really good. I feel so happy that I chose to do that.
That's great. And you said that you chose to do it because it was kind of a screw you to the people that let you go.
Yes.
Were there other factors as well? Is this something that you had wanted to do for a long time?
Yes. So when I was young, high school, I had always wanted to be a doctor, an MD doctor. So I remember in the 8th grade, I did this little careers thing, and my number one career was doctor, and my number two career was scientist. And so after I finished my master's, I had the opportunity to walk into a PhD program. My mentor was I've got it set up, it's Georgia, you're already in, you don't have to apply. Because it was with his old mentor, and it was doing the same kind of research, and he was you could just walk right into this program, you'll make money. And I was no, the nuclear girl. I was no, I want to go back and start a life with this woman. And so I think I'd always wanted to do a PhD. And then when I lost that job, it was in research, and one of my things was, man, I'm never going to be able to climb the ladder I'm never going to be able to do my own research unless I'm an MD or PhD. And I feel MD route would be a 10-year long journey, whereas the PhD route, I can apply today and maybe get in for the next round. So I have been wanting to do it for a long time. And one of my really, really good friends at my old job, she was one of my things was I don't have the time to do something this intensive. And she was like, my mom always says the time's gonna pass by anyway. Like you may as well do it. I mean, like it's not like yeah, the time's gonna pass regardless. And I was like, yeah, dang, that really hit me. And so yeah, I had been wanting to do it for a long time. I knew it was the direct route to having a successful research career. And then this losing the job really pushed me over the edge. And I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm just going to do it.
Awesome. That's very, very cool.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. Next question. All right. So think about whether there was a time in your life that you were consuming or you consumed a piece of art. So it might be a book, a movie, a song, a piece of music, anything really that you would classify as like a piece of art that you had a disproportionately emotional reaction to, whether it made you like super sad, super depressed, hysterical laughter. Does something come to mind?
Yes. What
was it?
Okay. Have you seen the movie Click?
No.
Yeah, it's a super random movie. It's Adam Sandler, and it's like a comedy.
Oh, it's the remote control one.
Yes.
Yeah, I have years ago, years and years and years ago.
Okay. So, I am not like traditionally a crier. Like, especially at this time, I think I was must have been like my 20s, I was in my 20s at some point, mid to late 20s, whenever I saw this movie. I don't remember when it came out. But I sobbed so hard at the scene where his dad died, and it was like a punch to the gut, and I was like, man, this is unusual. Like I can't control myself.
And what do you think it was about it that made you cry so hard?
So the scene is like Adam Sandler is like got this remote, and it allows him to like fast forward and rewind and jump through his life, and he can mute his wife when she's yelling at him, and he starts to like fast forward through parts that are boring. He's like, let me get to my promotion, etc. The remote starts autopiloting through his life, and he's missing stuff, and it's really dramatic. And so this scene, the climax is like I think he has like a heart attack or something, and he sees that his kids, like he prioritized work, and so now his son is like gonna go to work instead of go on his honeymoon because he had just got married, and this like sets Adam Sandler off, and he like jumps out of his hospital bed and chases after his son, and it's raining and it's dramatic, and yeah, he's like family first. And I don't know if it was like the thought of someone fighting for their kids, like, or if it's the thought of someone who was just on autopilot for so long that finally was standing up for something, and like to the point, like he's like something that he's gonna die for. I think that's what it was. Like he's like, I'm gonna die for, like, to make sure that my kids are okay, to make sure that they're happy, that they're not gonna repeat the same mistakes as me. I think that really touched me. Yeah, that really, really touched me. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. And we're going to come back to all of this. Okay. So next question. All right. Do you remember when you were a kid, was there something that you like absolutely loved? Like the first thing that you were obsessed with? Could be a person, a toy, an idea, a thing. You're smiling. Does something come to mind?
Yeah. It's so, I used to have this jacket I used to wear it all the time. And it was a down jacket, and I would wear it in Phoenix, Arizona over the summer. I had like cool pockets. Like it was really fancy. It was black. And I think it had a hood. I think when I think about it, I think the reason is because we're really poor, and we got some kind of like, like some companies will like just buy people who are struggling Christmas gifts. So
Yeah.
I think it was probably the Boys and Girls Club. I think they just bought us. I think they showed up to our house around Christmas time. I don't know if it was Christmas Day or a different day, but they like brought all this food. They brought like some bikes. I think they brought like 2 bikes, and I got a jacket out of the deal. And so I think it was like the first new thing I'd ever had like in my life. And I was like, this is cool. It's so like fancy. It's so warm, and it's so, yeah, I think it made me feel really special. Yeah. People would be like, take off your jacket. Like people would force me. They'd be like, no, take it off and put it away, like teachers. And I was like, okay.
And what do you think it was about this jacket that made you feel special? Was it like the coolness and the newness and the pockets?
I think it was the coolness and the newness. I don't think I looked particularly cool.
I'm sure you did.
I probably did. Let's be real. I think it was, I think it was also like modern. Whereas when you are used to shopping like secondhand and hand-me-down stuff, it's usually like outdated. Another thing, I'm the 7th of 8 kids. So like 92% of my wardrobe was from older brothers. There's 5 boys. I'm the 5th boy. So, I don't think they bought new clothes once they got to me.
Right.
So yeah. I think it was like modern. It was new. I got it during the winter, so it was like warm. So I was wearing it all the time, functionally. Yeah, I think I'm trying to think if I had other warm clothes or not. Maybe it was the best warm item I had as well, like for winter time. I think that was also a factor. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Awesome. That was a great one. And then last question for you. And then I'm going to tell you lots of things that I heard. So when you think of a time in your life where you were the most, the happiest, the most connected, the most at peace, when was that and what was going on?
Ooh, okay. Yeah. There's a few, but the one, this is a controversial statement, but believe it or not, it was the pandemic for me. Was like my best moment of feeling at peace. Reason being, I really didn't like my job, and I had to drive to Tucson, if you recall. And so when the pandemic hit, they were like, everyone works remote. And I was like, I have been asking you guys to work remote for so long. So that piece was like such a weight lifted off my shoulders. It was like just rolling out of bed, sitting at my desk. And I just felt like, I felt so like free and like, I don't know, I felt so good. I didn't like being in person. I didn't like being in person also because I had like one coworker who was like very hawkish, and she would like monitor me. She'd be like, why'd you take a 2-hour lunch? I'm like, are you my boss? Like, what's going on? Why are you talking to me? So, yeah, stuff like that. I just felt so relaxed, and I also felt like I could do my job effectively in less time because I don't have to drive. I don't have to chat with people. That was one thing. Another thing was I'm so extroverted. I'm like, most people I know, I'm the most extroverted person they know. I've never met someone more extroverted than me, to a fault. Like I will do silly things to be with people. Like I'll like not even be having a good time, but I'm like, I'm with some people, so that's cool. Like, so I had to like, that's something else I had to like, train out of myself. It's like, no, are you happy though? Are you having a good time? If you're not having a good time, you can go home. You'll be fine by yourself. And so, there were so many parts of my life that I had neglected because I would prefer to be with people than alone. And so, for example, I was like part of the like I don't watch TV club, and so being alone, I mean, there's not a whole. I mean, I don't know how you're gonna get through a whole pandemic without watching a little bit of TV.
Yeah.
So I had a list of projects that I had intended to do someday, and I would just like cross one off like every week, and I felt like I was doing so many cool things. Like I mounted the TV, and I think I bought some stuff to make my desk a little more functional, and I had donated a bunch of things, cleaned out all the closets, donated all these things, and I was like, man, this is a cool place to hang out. I would like to hang out here now. Like I would like to just. I watched Game of Thrones. I was like so many years behind, but I was talking to all my Game of Thrones friends, and they're like, "Oh man, yeah, season blah blah blah, that's crazy." I had a friend who I would just download every like all of my reactions to each episode. I was like, "This is crazy, what's going down in Westeros." And she's like, "Oh my gosh, I feel like I'm reliving Game of Thrones through you." So like there was that. My job gave me a raise. Biden gave me some money too. But then I was like working out all the time. I was like, I'm going to ride my bike. I'm only going to ride my bike. So I would ride my bike all through Phoenix. So I was like really physically in good shape and like emotionally. I think the other thing is, as a recovering people pleaser, I still have a really hard time saying no to invitations to hang out, and people always wanted to hang out, like to the point where I wouldn't make Friday plans because I knew I was liable to break them because I would be getting so many other plans. So when people were like, "Can we hang out Friday at 5?" I'd be like, "I can't say yes, but let's play it by ear. Like let's talk about this on Friday." And like sure enough, there would always be like on Friday, there would always be like someone being like, "Hey, what are you doing? You want to do happy hour at 6?" Like, "Hey, what are you doing? You want to do dinner at 7?" And so, yeah, so not having that happen was it really allowed me to like focus on some of these projects and these home projects and like working out, and like I would just sleep until woke up. In the beginning, I wasn't setting an alarm in the beginning, and I would just wake up around like 9. I'd be like, I guess I'll start my work day now. So it was nice to not have the like even the option, but also like the obligation to hang out with some folks. There was that, and then most importantly, I met the love of my life on Bumble because everything was closed. Except for the internet.
The internet's always open.
Yes. Yeah. So we had a Zoom call, first date. We did 2 Zoom calls actually, and then we met at a park with a mask on. And you had to like, at the time, I don't know if you remember, we didn't know how people were getting COVID, and everybody, like hundreds of people were dying every day, more than that. And when you would go to places, you had to stay in constant motion, and you could only walk one direction. So we were at the Japanese Friendship Gardens, and they had these arrows, and we had to like stay on this path. It was such a crazy time. We had having conversations that were like, "What's your bubble like?" Because there's no vaccine. Or like, "What's your bubble like?" And like, "Do you hang out with anyone in the medical field?" And like my housemate, we didn't live in the same space. I was like in the back casita, but he was like an ER doctor, and so she was like, "Oh my god, he's sharing oxygen with a doctor," and so that was really terrifying. It really felt like you were like having to decide whether it was worth it to risk your life with somebody
for this person
that you didn't know. Yeah. So that was crazy. We decided we were obsessed with each other, and we just started. The other cool thing was, since we had now started sharing our Bubble Is that the right word? Yeah. Combined bubbles. I we couldn't see people. I couldn't see my family or friends. And so we would just hang out all the time. Like we would do like every holiday, like Thanksgiving. I think we did a distance Thanksgiving, but like New Year's was just like me and her in the living room. We're just like dancing to random music. And it was like a lot of moments like that. It was really nice. I would love to go back to that. But, yeah, I think that was probably the most connected I've felt. It's definitely recently. Definitely
Yeah,
recently. Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for thank you for sharing all of that. It was so helpful. And so now what I'm going to do is tell you some of the things that I heard. And, remember that your core values shape your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions. And so what we're doing is looking at these important times in your life, all different kinds of important times where you thought, you felt, or you acted a particular way. And we're looking for clues from those thoughts, feelings, and actions as to what are the core values driving those. So essentially what I did was I listened to all of your answers. And I think that based on what you said, there are certain themes that I heard. And so I'm going to tell you some of those things. And then you can tell me how it lands, how it feels. Does it match up with your understanding of yourself?
Okay.
One thing I'll tell you when we're developing core values is at this stage, we're looking for the concept rather than the word. So, for example, when I'm working, a common one that might come up is something to do with equity, fairness, or justice. Now, those are three different concepts and they're related. And so at this point, we're looking for like the concept. And then later, you'll laser in on what the right word is for you.
Okay.
And remember, of course, that everybody defines those three words differently. And so picking the right word and how it's defined is an important part of the process, but that's not what we're doing today.
Right.
Okay. Alrighty. So here are some of the main things I learned or heard. Okay. So right off the bat, growth and learning. That it just runs through everything. It runs through your story about your pivotal moment after your breakup where you really just went on this like really aggressive learning journey and found ways to keep that learning going, even from, doing a PhD, but also being a researcher. What your current chosen career path is, it just really reflects this appetite for learning and growth. Mm-hmm. So that was number one. I'll go through everything and then you can tell me what lands. Mm-hmm. All right. So then I think there's something to do with autonomy, agency, or self-efficacy. So again, the word we can debate later, but there's something in this concept of having control over your own circumstances or being the driver of your own destiny. This came up in terms of working remotely, which you were able to do during the pandemic. You had told your employer you wanted to work remote and it made no sense to you that you were being forced, to do something. I think it even came up in certainly being able to do your own research in your PhD and wanting a position that you can do your own research and being able to do that. But I think it even maybe comes up in the love for the jacket, that this was something that was yours and that you got to wear. It was brand new, that you weren't dependent on the hand-me-downs of the 7 siblings that came before you. So something in there maybe about autonomy. Yeah. Next one, this seems really strong to me, is connection. Connection to self, connection to others, connection to community, but this concept of like being connected, and maybe authenticity. So being authentically connected. So maybe it's connection, maybe it's authenticity, and maybe it's both. Authenticity. I'm just writing that down. Then the other two that I think are particularly strong, and then I have some other ideas. So the other two I think are particularly strong are being resourceful or advocating. So that could be related to this idea of autonomy, agency, self-efficacy, or it could be separate. This idea of like advocating for people, advocating for yourself, figuring stuff out. I mean, your story of what you went through to figure out your PhD, you know, like that's not a normal level of resourcefulness. You know, you like figure stuff out. And then I think it relates to the moment in the Adam Sandler movie that made you sob, you know, this idea of like somebody taking a stand for something that they believe in. So the word there could be something different, but the word that I came up with was advocacy. And then the last one is, and this might be surprising, but is like ease or flow. The idea of, and this really came to me when you were talking about the pandemic and how pre-pandemic there was a lot of obligations, life was really full. And then in the pandemic, you were able to have like ease and flow in your day-to-day life. And you were still doing a ton of stuff, but you were doing stuff on your terms. And so the thing to think about there is, now, is that just another example of autonomy and agency? You know, or like, what was the thing there? Was it the fact that you were able to do it on your terms and that's really more autonomy? Or was it the fact that there was an ease or a flow to it? And then I had a bunch of other like ideas, but those were the ones that like really leapt out of me.
Yeah, that's interesting. With the last thing you said with the ease flow, I think there might also be like some kind of love and some sort of like thing about progress. Everybody wants progress, so that's not even exactly it, but like checking things off of the list, like that is such a like gratifying thing. And maybe that's in the like education or the growth piece. That's probably in the growth piece. Yeah. Okay.
Well, I don't know. So it's funny you should say that, because I also wrote down love. Just love as a concept, like love being important, self-love, love for others, love for your community. So that was one. I wrote down improvement / betterment / movement. So one of my core values is movement. And I mean that in the double sense of the word. Yes, physical movement, but also like things getting better, like progress. And I learned this during the pandemic. I didn't have this identified. And then what I really struggled with in the pandemic was just how static life was. But then also things weren't improving and I wasn't able to make things improve. And it was really, really missing for me. And it was difficult. And then it got a little bit easier when I realized what was missing. And then, so that was definitely one. And then achievement, maybe.
Yeah. That's or I'm saying yes in the sense that like part of the progress of the pandemic was like, I was like, man, I had this whole like, I used to put my to-do projects like on this shelf. And I'd be like, okay, I'm gonna start with this one, I'm gonna start with that one, I'm gonna start with this one. And like the shelf just only got bigger. And I think something about like, oh man, I'm like getting through the shelf, I'm mailing these things that I said I was gonna mail 2 years ago. Like, oh, I mounted the TV, like that progress of like, I met Jessica. Also, another thing in there was I got into the PhD program I was trying to get into during the pandemic as well. So I was like, man, I got into this program, my job got better, I met this girl, I'm working out, and I'm like, my fitness is good. And I felt like that was like, I made a list and I like got to like check it off. Whereas usually I make lists and instead of my list comes last, like I make my list, I put it here, and then someone gives me their list, and I go through all of that first, and I like almost never get to my list. And I was like, I finally got to get to my list. Yeah, that was good. That progress.
That felt good. So I think, the things I mentioned were, as a quick recap, growth
Yes.
slash learning. I might add curiosity to that list. So growth slash learning slash curiosity. Autonomy, self-efficacy, number 2, connection, authenticity, and then maybe improvement or like checking stuff off the list.
Yeah. Those all, I would say definitely, like the self-efficacy and the, what was the first one? Equity?
Growth. I didn't actually have equity.
Growth. Okay. Yeah. Growth. 100% yes. I definitely feel connected to that as a tenet in my life. Like you said, the education, like it's always been there throughout everything. Connection, like 100%, 1000% for sure. And then, we said self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is funny because I also am like, I read this book called, Siddhartha, and like the whole thing was like he was like following the Buddha's teachings, kind of, but not really. And there's all these people following the teachings, and he was like, I don't want to follow the teachings. I want to do whatever the Buddha did to get to the aha moment that he had. So like, what did he do? I want to do that stuff. And I feel that way too, of like, I'd rather like make a mistake and like learn from it than trying to just like follow the things I'm supposed to be following. So definitely, and is that self-efficacy? Is that education? Oh man, kind of crosses both of them a little bit. Yeah,
it could be. Yeah, exactly. It could be growth, education. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I would say the one I feel the least connected to is authenticity, but it could just be the word that I'm getting stuck on because I have like a very specific definition of authenticity in my head. Tell me more about the what were you thinking with that one?
Well, it really came out when we were talking about connection and just connection, and I think that maybe my definition's going in there a little bit because I think to be truly connected to others, you need to be yourself. And so that is really where that idea came from.
Yeah. There is a huge thing in there that only started after the breakup of like being myself. I just had this whole like moment, this coming to Jesus moment of like, you're trying so hard to like make this other person happy or be something else, and then like you're not happy and then they're not happy. So like you may as well just be yourself and then at least you're happy, and then maybe hopefully someone else will find you enjoyable as well. But the being yourself, authenticity, like that whole vibe is definitely a thing for me as well.
And I think being connected to your core values helps you be yourself. And so sometimes this concept of being yourself or authenticity comes up a lot when I'm doing core values discovery with people. But it's not always because authenticity is a core value. It's often because they are connecting to themselves through this work. If that makes sense.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So the other value that is true for is something to do with like feeling peaceful or being centered. So that one comes up a lot, but more often than not, it's that when somebody is in alignment with these values, they feel centered rather than being centered being a core value.
That makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. Interesting.
The other one I'm not sure I said was compassion. Did I say that?
No, we didn't hear about compassion.
So I was thinking compassion for yourself. You had a lot of compassion for yourself. It sounds like, or you were encouraged to have compassion for yourself after your breakup. And then compassion for other people. Now, I will say this is being a little bit influenced by just what I know of you as a person too. But that was a theory I had.
Yeah, and what was the one before that? Was it like just progress in general?
Yeah, progress, improvement, betterment.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
Getting,
that's definitely, yeah, absolutely. 100%.
okay.
Yeah, compassion is definitely in there. Absolutely. My hesitation is like, I feel like could be more compassionate to myself. At least that's what my girlfriend tells me. Um, but compassion for others definitely is in there.
Yeah.
And it's like there's something in there about others and
Mm.
beyond like connection and
Okay.
compassion. Is it compassion? Yeah, it's in the conceptually. Yeah, it's definitely in that vibe. I got to workshop the word that
The word.
makes more sense.
Yeah. All right. So here's where we're at. So here are the concepts. I like that you brought that up again. Like these are the concepts that we're working with. Something to do with growth / learning, something to do with connection, something to do with self-efficacy, something to do with improvement, and something to do with compassion.
Yeah, yeah, I would say that lands for me.
So here's what we're going to do. So you're going to sleep on it,
Okay.
think about it. And we are set to record our next episode 7 days from now. And
Okay.
here's the sort of like thinking homework I'll give you is as you go about your life, remembering that this set of core values drives your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions. When you are feeling a particular thing, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, run it through this theory and be like, what's going on for me here? And particularly if you are feeling like grumpy or sad or annoyed this week, like what is missing for me
Okay.
out of these things? Or if you're feeling particularly connected, be like, what is present? You know, if you have a moment at work this week, you're like, man, I love my job. What is happening for you? And that is a really good way of testing this theory that we have or identifying something that might be missing.
Okay.
And then what we'll do is at the beginning of our next session, we'll check in about what you've learned. And then for the purposes of our next session, we'll pick, which core values we're working with. And then we'll go into how you use those. I will say that, and the reason I say we're going to pick them for the purposes of our session next week is that core values is a process. Figuring them out, defining them. It isn't something you do in one recording, and it's certainly not something you do in 1 week. So we'll just have this working theory to use next week.
Okay. We'll call it the rough draft.
Exactly. A rough draft.
Yeah.
Yes. Perfect. Okay, cool. Well, this was awesome. Thank you so much, Forest.
Yes, absolutely. I'm so glad I was able to do this with you. I didn't know how it was going to go, if we were going to get like very deep or very clear, and I feel like we did both. I'm like really excited about how this went.
Yay. Thank you so much for doing this. It was so much fun. And I'm so excited to connect again next week and figure out how you're gonna utilize these things in your life.
Yes, me too. Sounds good. I guess I'll see you then.
Wasn't that conversation absolutely incredible? I am so grateful to Forest for just how open and honest and vulnerable he was. It is so fun to dig into somebody's core values. Remember 2 things. 1, your core values drive your thoughts, your actions, and your feelings. And number 2, because of that, it's pretty easy to look into your recent or your further away history and look for clues as to what your core values might be. And it is such a cool activity to go through. So do it on your own, do it with a friend. Remember that there is a worksheet available on catherinealonso.com that talks you through all of the questions I went through with Forest, as well as some additional activities to help you identify what your core values are and how you define them. So catherinealonso.com, you can go and download that resource. And I really hope that it's helpful for you. I really hope that you have enjoyed this conversation, and I look forward to seeing you back here for the next episode of Change and You. And I should plug that the next episode is Forest and I going, now that he knows what his core values are, really digging into how he can use those core values as a tool for overcoming obstacles in his life. So that is where the real magic happens. Make sure you don't miss it.